I must admit, like I thought with all the hype going into the weekend, the championship being closer, Perez being at his home race, Red Bull track, Mercedes doing however well they were doing, I was expecting an epic race. I was just expecting some, wheel to wheel action. I was expecting some amazing strategy. And personally, I don't feel like we got that this weekend. I feel like it was a bit of just a dull race. Like, started and it finished.
It's because he doesn't know how to put two and two together. He puts two and two together and he gets five, and it should be four. So
Hi, welcome back to On the Chicane. You're here with me, Paris, and my co-host Mariam, and we're going to talk to you today about the Mexican City Grand Prix. Um, it's just finished, so we're recording, and it's quite late in the UK compared to what we usually have been doing for previous races. But I kind of like this evening recording time. Gives you a whole day to kind of deal with whatever you have to deal with, and then sit down, chill with glass of wine and watch some F1. I wouldn't mind it if a few more of the races were this late. I don't know if anybody else would agree with me. But yeah, so Mariam, you might know a few cool facts about the Mexican track. I don't know if you usually have to write some stuff, so I don't know if you had to this time.
yeah, I do a circuit guide actually for every track. So what can I tell you about Mexico? Probably nothing that you guys don't already know. It's obviously the highest track on the calendar. So elevation here is super high, which means that it's really tough on drivers and the cars. There's all sorts that they have to think about in terms of cooling and turbo and all sorts. Obviously, a fact that I'm sure everyone now knows is the fact that no Mexican has ever stood on the podium at Mexico, except now, obviously, Perez, which we'll obviously get into a little bit later. Um, yeah, honestly,
Yeah, I think
else.
that's pretty cool that Perez managed to do something at his home Grand Prix. The crowd was absolutely wild, going crazy for Perez. You could even hear the commentators basically saying, like, you could hear them in the commentary box. Perez said he could hear them from the car. So far, I feel like Zandvoort and US and Mexico are maybe like the three tracks that have the most vibes. Like, I genuinely want to just go to those tracks and party. And I want to
Yeah,
see next year what Miami's saying.
I was thinking today, to be fair, the stadium section at
Mm.
Mexico City looks like a really cool seating area. I love that it kind of surrounds that part of the track.
Yeah, and
Um,
then you've got the S bend all the way through it. It looks
yeah,
amazing.
it looks really cool. So
We might
yeah,
have
I
to
wouldn't
add that
mind
to our
going to
list.
Mexico. Yeah, I think it's on my list
Definitely.
too now, actually. Although,
Okay.
I mean, that bit's cool, but I don't know if it's a great track for racing in general.
I must admit, like I thought with all the hype going into the weekend, the championship being closer, Perez being at his home race, Red Bull track, Mercedes doing however well they were doing, I was expecting an epic race. I was just expecting some, wheel to wheel action. I was expecting some amazing strategy. And personally, I don't feel like we got that this weekend. I feel like it was a bit of just a dull race. Like, started and it finished.
This is the thing, the next few tracks, aside from Brazil, the next few are very difficult for overtaking.
Mm.
So action here, like there probably could be there is potential for wheel to wheel action, but the potential for actual overtaking on any of the tracks is going to be very difficult. Obviously, Abu Dhabi's a shit track, no offense. Um, Saudi is going to be a new track, which is very narrow. That's a street circuit as well, so not going to be great. We're racing in Qatar for the first time, which is a super fast track because it's all built for MotoGP. So even that will be difficult. Brazil is the only one that's kind of got the opportunity for some overtaking, but again, it's going to be quite difficult because it's a bit of an oval shape, Brazil.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if we're really going to get much action for the
That's
like
really
last
interesting
races.
because that's going to play into the championships. Like whoever is leading, in the early stages of each race is probably going to win, which is what we saw today. Um, let's just have a quick run through the whole weekend. So on Friday and Saturday morning, you had all the free practices. Perez topped two of the timesheets and he was looking very, very strong. And everybody, there was the whole thing like, oh, if Perez gets pole, what kind of team orders are they going to have to do to protect Verstappen's race and his championship? The conversations were going wild, but we know what would have happened if Perez was ahead of Max. He would have had to have moved aside and he would have done it gladly. So the beginning of the weekend, Red Bull were looking strong, but then yesterday, during qualifying on Saturday, it kind of seemed like it was more favoring Mercedes due to perhaps some of Red Bull's mistakes. So they had an issue with their rear wings in that they were taking on too much load and it looked like they had to like literally duct tape it to kind of keep it in place. And then you had Max messing up a little bit on his Q3 lap. And then Perez accidentally going off after Tsunoda, who was in Q3, even though he probably shouldn't have been, moved to the side to allow him to overtake. And I think it was a combination of a few things. I think Perez seeing someone in the distance kind of off probably naturally slowed down in case there was an issue. Tsunoda going off allowed some dust onto the track, which probably caused him to be, a little bit bent out of shape and stuff. But in any case, that kind of ruined the quali lap of Perez. And Max, who had kind of messed up a little bit earlier in the lap, also then messed up again in that lap. So due to the timings, he probably wouldn't have got pole position anyway, but it was just like, oh crap, Yuki, who is the junior team driver, has messed up the lap of the two other drivers from the senior team. That wasn't the case, but that was the narrative that was being pushed at the time. And Yuki kind of was getting harsh words from Christian Horner to the point where even Helmut Marko had to be like, dude, like it wasn't his fault, going into the race today, it just seemed like Mercedes should have been ahead. Bottas got pole, Hamilton was second, and Verstappen was third, and Perez was fourth. So I think we were all expecting just a little bit more fight from the Mercedes as a pair, but into the first corner we didn't get that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know what happened, to be honest. Like before the race started, Max did say, yeah, it's actually, I'm happy to be starting third. And he was right. I mean, he had the racing line, he had the slipstream, and obviously Bottas, which he's done before this year, kind of seemed to move aside and not really defend that racing line, which gave Max the perfect opportunity to get alongside him. And then going on the outside into the first corner, I mean, it was literally like handing him the lead on a plate, and it was kind of Bottas just not really doing his job properly again.
Yeah, he should have defended harder, right?
Yeah, definitely. That's the issue that we've seen with Bottas a lot this year. Like he's not defending hard enough, and then he also got caught up in the whole situation with like being clipped by Ricardo, and then spinning, and then he dropped down to like last, and it was just chaos at the start. And Max just had the easiest start, got away and retained that pace and that lead, and there was no way that Hamilton was going to be able to catch up to him. And unfortunately, the race became one of those races that was like, okay, Hamilton's not fighting for first now because Verstappen's so far ahead. He's actually fighting to keep second because Perez is on his ass. So yeah, I mean, it was a very forgettable race. I wasn't really that impressed with the coverage, to be honest, because as you said before we started recording, we didn't see half of what was going on in the midfield just because they were just too focused on what was going on with Bottas and
Bottas and Ricardo, and then Perez and Hamilton.
Yeah, Perez and Hamilton. We didn't really see what was going on in the midfield. And yeah, I mean, it was just a bit of a shit race, to be honest.
Yeah.
There wasn't much.
Considering how hype the crowd was and how hype everything was going into the weekend, I think you're right. Like, the race fell flat. The actual racing fell flat. And I think it wasn't helped by really crap defending from Bottas once again. And not to shit on him, because on the one hand, he was very, very unlucky this weekend. Like, sorry, not this weekend. He was very, very unlucky today. Yeah. He had an amazing quali yesterday, amazing pace, but then actually taking that pace into the race, managing to overtake those midfield cars. You compare it to like some of Hamilton's performances this year, where he's had to drop back to the midfield for whatever reason, and he's managed to kind of like overtake the cars. And you just wonder, like, if Hamilton was in the same position, how would he have done with that same equipment? Because I think he would have managed to push himself up into the points at least. Meanwhile, Bottas couldn't. I also think on that first lap, when he kind of like slowed, so he broke very early into turn 1, right? And that allowed Verstappen to come up on his left-hand side. But I also think there was a moment there where he was probably thinking, okay, I don't want to squeeze Lewis into this corner. I want to give Lewis as much space as possible for Lewis to get round and overtake me and get in front. And he was probably thinking that would help Lewis. I don't know. I don't presume to know exactly what was in his head, but if you kind of watch it back with this in mind, like, I think he thought he was doing Lewis a favor, but he forgot to defend at the same time. Like, if you're going to do that, cool, let Lewis pass, but get your ass in front of Verstappen so that Verstappen can't get past you at the same time as you slow him down. Do you know what I mean? Like, his whole thought process just seems a bit like, dude, come on.
This is why he's not staying next year. It's because he doesn't know how to put 2 and 2 together. He puts 2 and 2 together and he gets fucking 5, and it should be 4. So this is why he's lost his seat. I mean, like you say, not to shit on him, we do have a bit of a soft spot for Bottas, but the guy let us down today. And he did have a shit race, but do you know what? Whatever, I'm over it. I'm over the race. It wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I expected.
Mercedes and their shit stops again. The shit stops are back, guys.
Literally.
I do not know what happened with Bottas's left front tire, but this dude and his tires in pit stops, like, it was just Monaco all over again. A 12-second pit stop.
It's always
crazy.
Him.
Always.
I don't understand. Mercedes really need to fix up. We've said this time and time again this year. They really need to fix up. I don't understand. They're supposed to be a top team. They're supposed to be the top team. And yet they screw up so badly on really vital points. Everyone knows a pit stop can literally make or break your race. Why are you still screwing up like this? Especially given the fact that you've had this exact same issue in Monaco earlier this year, and it cost you that race as well. Why are you still screwing up several races later? You should have fixed that problem ages ago.
Literally. Anyway. Your whole anger is my whole anger. I completely agree. I just think that today was really bad from the racing side for Bottas and Mercedes. And once again, Hamilton did not have the equipment underneath him to do what he needed to do to kind of maintain that speed up to Red Bull. And he literally just drove his little ass off to save face.
Scraped that second place. I mean, that last lap, Perez was on him. And I'm so grateful for the fact that the second DRS zone was short and it didn't give him the opportunity that he needed to be able to overtake Lewis, because oh my god, if he had I don't even want to talk about it, because imagine he'd done it. No, I'm out. I'd have walked away and I'm done with this season. Nope.
Let's go a little bit further down the pack. So after you had like the top runners, you had Verstappen, Lewis, and Perez. Then you had Gasly, who, kudos to this man. Like, dude is doing well. I checked his stats just for qualifying because he qualified in a really good position, and I checked his stats for qualifying. And the other person who you kind of compare him to is Lando Norris. Because they've both had really good seasons, right? And actually, Gasly has outqualified Norris 11 times to Lando Norris's 7. But Lando Norris has had like a couple of better finishes. So obviously he had that pole position at Sochi, and he had like a second position in, I think it was Austria too. So, you know, he's had some really good stuff that's kind of made him look a bit more elevated in people's perception. But Gasly is being very, very solid, and he showed that again this race, I think.
I've said this all season though, like Gasly has been the most consistent driver on the grid this season. You can't, like, even Max, even Lewis, like no one compares to Gasly. Gasly has always like he's had a few bad races where it's not been his fault. It's like things that have happened outside of his control. But in terms of someone who actually is driving and achieving consistent results, Gasly is up there. And yeah, I rate the kid. I think he's done really well, and he should be very happy with himself. And honestly, a top team or a better team needs to pick him up at some point. I know he's got another year with AlphaTauri next year, but I'm so bored of seeing him at AlphaTauri. He has potential, and I think he's obviously learned from whatever happened at Red Bull.
He's a race winner for sure. Put him in a race winning car and he will win new races, I think. Easily. Because if you think about it, he's in the beta car right now, and he's, you know, best of the rest essentially a lot of the time, alongside Norris. Like, he's the other best of the rest. So I don't know, I think he definitely, you know, good, really solid driver. Behind him you had the Ferraris. So you had Sainz and Leclerc. They had a little squabble in the middle there.
Yeah, they did.
Bit of a brotherly fighting going on.
I mean, I'm glad that they didn't actually take it wheel to wheel. I'm glad that the arguments and stuff was kind of over the radio, and it was kind of just a bit tedious. But I'm glad that it wasn't wheel to wheel. Let me actually fight you, because that could have cost them the race. And Ferrari had a really good race in comparison to McLaren, who is obviously their competitor this season. So I was very happy with the way that kind of played out. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy with the boys. Love the boys.
And then after that, you had kind of ongoing battle throughout the race of Vettel, Raikkonen, Alonso, and then I think Norris just tagged onto the back of that a little bit throughout the race, but didn't really do much with that. I don't really know what's been happening with Lando Norris the last couple of races. He seems to be on a bit of a downer. He's having a bit of a season down bit. But yeah, the golds and oldies were having a little grandpa squabble in the middle.
Listen,
I know Vettel's not that old.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
just when you put him in that little group, they are the older ones.
I mean, 2 of them are over 40. Seb is still only 34. Okay, yeah, he's not old. I'm sorry, he's not. But it was, I mean, like I said before, that we don't really get to see that coverage, which is annoying. I mean, we heard bits of it and whatever, but yeah, I'm just happy that Seb had a really good race today, actually. I think he finished 7th, which is pretty impressive considering how bad it's been for Aston Martin over the past few races. And it was also bad for Stroll today. But he also managed to do quite well. I think he finished 14th or something. So yeah.
Stroll 14th.
Yeah. So
definitely pretty good for them.
Yeah.
Then you had Giovinazzi, who did some really good gains, I think, early in the race.
Yeah.
I think possibly kind of making the most of that first lap incident that caused the safety car, and then which was a Bottas spinning and one of the Hasses, Mick Schumacher being out and Tsunoda being out. So I think he kind of just made the most of that, and that gained him a lot of places. And then he got overtaken a little bit, but he was still, just outside the top 10 at the end of it, which, decent for Giovinazzi considering
the
way he normally is. And then you had Ocon, Stroll, Ricardo, Ocon, Stroll, and then Bottas. Bottas would probably have been up where Ricardo was. As you said, he had like the bad pit stop. He actually had 4 pit stops in this race, more than anybody else. The last pit stop was to put him onto soft tires so that he could steal the fastest lap from Verstappen. I mean, to me, that's just smart and intelligent. I think Mercedes were like super right to do that. He wasn't getting the points anyway, and he'd already had a really shit race, so I don't think it really hurt him anymore, did it?
Every point is crucial at this point. So yeah, he wasn't in the points, so it wouldn't have, if it had screwed up, it wouldn't have cost him anything. So yeah, I mean, it made sense. So I'm glad they did that. They finally got something right this race.
And then the two Williams, Russell and Latifi, and then rounding it out was Mazepin, who was 3 laps behind Verstappen at this time. That means he had to go round 3 times after everybody else had finished, or after Verstappen had finished the race. Take this guy off of the track. Take him off. Get rid of the Hasses, man. I'm tired of this shizers.
They really need an upgrade. I mean, I'm hoping that next year kind of does them some favors, because it's boring now. But yeah, that was pretty much the race. Really not much to tell. We've got the second triple header, second leg of the triple header next weekend, which is Brazil. That's going to be interesting.
I hope that race will give us something a bit more, and I hope that next year, with all the modifications that they're making to the car and the way that you're supposed to now be able to follow behind, because I think that was a big issue today, was that they couldn't follow behind close enough, even though there was less drag on the cars, they couldn't overtake, right? So I'm just hoping that, I don't know, there's a bit of more overtaking next week at Brazil, and next year they kind of, that is all sorted, and we don't get these really crappy races where once the order is set in the first few laps, that's it.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully next year will provide a bit more variety. But I guess just to end this video, as we always do, your winners and losers of the day, who are they?
So winner of the day, I'm gonna say Gasly. I think Verstappen had a really good race and he was really lucky, and he did, he kept pole or whatever, he kept first position, but he didn't have to do anything. He literally just drove. Like, he was unchallenged for more or less the entire race. Perez and Hamilton did their little dance and stuff, but I really admire the fact that Gasly was solidly up there from his qualifying position. I think that was really good, and he kind of maintained that for the race.
Yeah. What about your loser today?
I want to say Bottas. I just wanted to maybe say someone different other than Bottas. Yeah. Oh, I'm gonna have to say Bottas. Poor guy. Wasn't his fault, but I think also there were some things he could have done differently. What about you?
My winner is, I'm just going to say Perez, just because he's obviously achieved a big milestone for Mexican drivers by being the first Mexican on the podium. It wasn't pole, it wasn't second, but still an achievement to get third. And my loser of the day, I just have to agree, Bottas, because duh, I mean, that race was horrendous. So yeah, Bottas, soz mate, but there's a reason you're leaving. Yeah, that was it. I guess, yeah, we've got a week until Brazil. That's going to be interesting. Guys, just for your information, our videos will be a little bit late for the next 2 races, just because we're going to be recording a day later, just for various reasons. So bear with us, but you will get the normal videos. Yeah, I think that's it. Paris, where do people find us?
You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at On the Chicane, and check out our website. We've got some interesting interviews and things on there. And it would be nice if you guys had a look and saw some of the wonderful editorial stuff that we've been putting out as well.
Yeah, have a look. But until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you soon.
Cheers. Bye.